Hello there, and a very good morning to you. We're glad you're watching Morning Express. From the way it is to our lifestyle segment now, we want to focus on matters cultism, or cult if you like. And just to look at the definition of what a cult is, it's a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. There's also another here, a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. So joining us in studio to talk more about this, and perhaps before I introduce my guest, to remind you of that story that, you know, attracted the attention, captured the attention of the country, was on the spotlight for a number of days. The Magu family, the tragic killing of the wife and 3 children, and also alleged committal of suicide by Mr. Magu himself. That brought into the spotlight what could have been happening in that household. There was a book that was found there which really just detailed some of those cultic practices. And it is what we want to venture in today. And joining me in studio is James Combo, professor, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs at the Day State University, and my immediate left. In the middle with us is Philan Mapesa. She was exposed to cultism, and she'll be sharing with us her story shortly. And at the very end is Boss Sonyina, who's a counseling psychologist. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'll begin with you, Philan, and talk to us about your experience. So you were married to a man who got into or was involved in cultism. At the point of getting married, though, were you aware of this? Was there anything out of place, or was everything okay?
At the start of it, everything was okay. But things started changing all of a sudden, gradually, slowly by slowly.
What was changing?
Okay, when we got married, at first, while I finished my O-level education, okay, there's this guy who was in love with me. He was, we were in relationship. So he proposed that, he told my father that he'll take me to college. Little did I know that he was taking advantage of me, that he wanted to marry me. Now, he told me, he convinced me that we start staying together. Then, as time goes by, he'll take me to college. Then, all of a sudden, I got pregnant. Then, after 9 months, I delivered a baby girl called Mercy. Then this guy, all of a sudden, he started, okay, he was a church goer, Catholic church goer. Then all of a sudden he told me that he don't feel like going to Catholic church, that we look for another church to go to.
Did he explain why?
He told me that he does not feel like going to Catholic, he does not like it. Or he did not give me
any reason.
Reasons. So, okay, I told him he's the one to choose the church that we'll go to. Okay. I realized that whenever he decided that we'll go to this church, and being the wife, I had to follow what he was telling me. As I gave him time to decide which church that we might go to. When we went to the church, we fellowshiped maybe 2 or 3 Sundays. Then he comes in the house. One evening, he tells me that, no, this is not the right church. That God is speaking to me, is telling me that this is not the right church. Then I get tired. I feel like, no, why? So I tell him, as my husband, that he's the one still to decide on what we'll do. So he comes again and tells me, yes, I've gotten another church. We'll go to it. Okay, we go there 2 to 3 Sundays. For 1 month, he comes and tells me, no, God tells me this is not the right church. Okay, I got fed up. Now I was asking him, can we just choose only one church that we'll be going to? Then we started differing, because I had discovered that he's moving from church to church, but I don't know. Okay, the God that is communicating to him, why don't that God communicate also to me which church to go to? Okay, it reached a time that he told me that we'll go to a certain church. At long last, he told me that this is the last church that we'll go to, we'll be fellowshipping with. Okay, one day he told me that, okay, the church, God had spoken to him that he should put on a long gown, or so that he'll be wearing that gown when he goes to the church. Okay, he went ahead, bought the gown white, and he was claiming that it's God that is speaking to him. Okay, all the time he would not sleep. He could just spend his night on the chair. He's telling me that he's praying the whole night.
Okay.
Okay. Then one night, before that night, okay, he developed a habit that he's telling me that God is telling him that he should not go to work. He should just be going out, preaching to people, spreading the gospel, while he's praying that God, the God that will enable me to get employed so that I cater for the family. Now I felt as in he's my husband, he should provide for us our basic needs. Why? Now
so at what point did it get worrisome for you, so we can speed it up? So this is a time he's gotten into this church, he wants to preach and pray for you to get a job. So at what point did you really get concerned and as to bring
now you see, there was a day that at night he told me that he'll not sleep on the bed. He'll just pray overnight, that tomorrow he's having a lesson. He'll be teaching on the Bible study. I went to sleep. Okay, all of a sudden, he woke me up, then on finding that he had a knife in his hand, telling me that he feels that he should kill me, and my daughter Mercy was around. He wants to kill Mercy, and then he does away with his life. Oh, and we were in just a one-roomed house. I really cried because...
Did he say why he wanted to do that?
No, he said that he feels that his life has reached the end. Okay. Now, he has been preaching the gospel, doing everything that God intended him to do, and it has reached to the end.
And had you attended this church with him, this last one, before he came up to want to kill you?
No, he told me to go with him, but I denied because I had got fed up.
Okay,
yes.
We'll come back to you. Professor, let me come to you and ask this. What do you make of that particular story, those details? Is that reminiscent of what one would describe as a cult?
First of all, thank you so much, and I'm glad that you have come up with this topic.
Mm-hmm.
What our sister here has described is very typical of a cultic organization and the membership, those who follow in these groups. Mm-hmm. There are about 4 things that will be important for anyone to look for when focusing on a real church. Now, I don't want to focus so much on cult, because when you do so, you end up losing the focus, which is what is the real church.
Yeah,
because
although
the other
we also
thing
want
is
to put the spotlight on the cult to understand what it is,
yes,
what people to watch out for, and what they need
I'll come to that. But first and foremost, anybody who does not appear to have a respect for orthodox or traditional understanding of faith, one wants to really look into that. If the area of the tradition of faith is beginning to wobble, there's something about it which doesn't appear to be adding up, that is something that one wants to pay attention to. If one comes up with the idea that theirs is the only, that everybody else out there may as well be wrong or have been wrong, their position is the position, then again, that is a red light. One wants to very carefully, watch that. When it comes to the area of fellowship, we talk about fellowship as an important mark of any serious church. But fellowship here could as well be what kind of people are you hanging around with? Who are the people who are defining your faith? Who are the people who are defining your relations? Now, if these people are part and parcel of a circle which does not come very close, and you don't see them rotating within the church context, again, you want to ask yourself,
but
what
isn't
is
that a
going
little
on?
bit vague, Professor? Because
Yes.
many at times, and for those who get into these practices, some of the stories you hear, it's a very thin line between what you call church, what you call the doctrinal principles, what is acceptable, and then the lie and the deception that they propagate. Isn't it a very thin line so as to say that you need to be careful of this and this? What exactly is it that one must really look out for? Because it's a thin line. They'll still be praying, worshiping, doing all of these practices that are considered religious.
The line is thin, and that is one of the reasons why they actually sprout and stay around with almost as much impunity as they can. However, even as we think the line is thin, for purposes of defining what it is that we must walk within, then you realize that it is important to stay within the line, within the circle. And those four things that I said are important. One, what is the definition of faith? How do we define our faith? And in that context, the understanding of the Lordship of Jesus Christ is crucial. Proper reading of Scripture is another one, which is very, very crucial. How is the Scripture being read? Who is this who is helping one to come up with a definition?
So it's important for someone to read the Bible and know God, have that relationship
yes,
for themselves.
read the Scripture, know God. The other very serious thing, which is very common among the cultists, is the giving of their lives to somebody else to control. The leadership is often extremely controlling. They want to have your money, they want to have your time, in some cases, even your spouse and children and everything.
Good point you bring in there, and we'll continue to get more of your thoughts on this. But we also just want to welcome you at home. If you're watching this, would like to participate either through an experience you had to share that with us, or any question you may have, feel free. Our phone numbers will be scrolling on the bottom end of your screen. You can engage with us this morning. I want to bring in now for Boston, who's a counseling psychologist. So when Phelan came to you, for a session, she explains to you what's happening. As a counseling psychologist, was the first thing you thought this must be a cult? Or did you just imagine these are issues at home that need to be settled out?
Well, thank you. Let me start by describing briefly when Phelan came. When Phelan came and she was brought by the secretary, when she walked in, I was already in the counseling room. And I realized the moment she saw me, a man, she actually started moving back literally with the secretary. And then at that point, I realized this lady has had a very bad experience with men. Then I immediately used a scale called the VDSC. Then I addressed her that, oh, yes, young lady, I've just realized you must have had a very bitter experience with men. But I want to assure you that see a professional, not a man. Then she was like, how did he know that I've had a bad experience with men?
And this bad experience was what you'd gone through with your husband at the time?
Yes, and at that particular point, I had not talked to her. She had just walked in with the secretary. She was behind. And when the secretary introduced her and said, this is your client, you are going to see her now, as she was moving back to leave me with the client was also moving back with her. Then that is when I immediately realized this. Okay, as at that point, I had not really placed that it was a cult.
So at what point, after you've now sat down, you've had a session, did you then immediately place it was, and what about what she said got you to that conclusion? Actually,
during the first session, she was really reserved. So it was actually trying to create that trust. That was what basically took the whole session. Then now during the second session, that is when she started sharing. Now, bringing out these kind of experiences, actually she has just summarized, but you know, now in a session, she had to bring out everything. Then immediately I realized this is not a normal domestic violence. So that is how I was able to place it. Because again, as a professional, as the client shares, you listen to where do you place this kind of
So
issue.
that's what. So did you immediately know to place it as a cult?
Okay, from the sharing, I
Yes.
realized it is not normal domestic violence.
Okay.
So the climax, the attempt of killing, and because I had already learned that that is the climax of the cult, so I immediately placed it. But of course, I would not bring it out as a cult. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's come back to you, Mapesa. And here is a man you've known for a while. You're married, have children, wants to kill you. How did you survive that particular ordeal, and what was it that followed in as far as your decision thereafter to leave him?
Okay, that night that he told me that he had decided that he wants to kill me. He had a knife in his hand. Now we are in one room, and already he had locked. I realized that he had already locked the door, and I don't know where the key was. Okay. I remembered my child, my daughter Mercy. Mercy was not with us. She was at home in Kakamega with my mom. So I just remembered my daughter, and I felt as in like, oh, I'm to be killed. I don't know how to help myself. So I decided just to tell God, may your will be done. If it is that this man to kill me, let it be. And if it is your will that I live again, let it be. Okay, I sat on the chair and I really wept. I really wept. And I had no any other thing to tell him. So all of a sudden I realized that, okay, he had gone to the bed and relaxed there. He gave me only 10 minutes to tell God my last word, and to call my mom and tell her my last word. And then he went on the bed and leaned, he relaxed there. Within the 10 minutes, I told God, let your will be done, because I couldn't tell anything more than that. Okay. All of a sudden, I realized that he had deeply slept. I just sat on the chair, whispering some words in my heart to my God.
Why didn't you leave? This is a person who wants to kill you. He's fallen asleep. Is another moment to flee.
In that house, I looked everywhere. He had already, I wanted to leave the house, but he had already locked the house
Put away the keys.
with a padlock, and I looked for the key, nowhere to find it. So I just sat down, really weeping. He was deep now asleep, and as I tell God, may your will be done. Let me see my daughter another day. Okay, I realized that already it was dawn now at 5. He woke up, rushed to the bathroom, came back, he put on his clothes and left. That is the last time I saw him up to today.
So you don't know what happened to him?
I've never seen him. Now I woke up, went to the landlord's house. I told her, I told my neighbors, I called my mom at home. I felt as in like things have changed.
Yeah. Now, in
Everything.
hindsight, looking back at that particular time, other than the constant change from one church to the other, is there anything now when you look back that you think should have, you know, rung the bell in as far as things going south with your husband then?
Come again?
At this, now when you look back at what happened, you know, the experience you had with him, are there things that stand out that should have rung a bell, an alarm that things are not okay, that he's getting into a cult? Is there anything that stood out for you that you say, oh, by the way, this and this was weird? Other than the changing of church you said he did, was there anything else that now you think about and say, oh yeah, maybe this should have made me think there's something off or wrong?
Okay. When I remember, when I flash back his life, because when he had already gone, I tried to imagine or what might be happening, what was wrong with this man. Okay, I remember that there was one day when I got married to him. He told me that we were to go home at their home place in Kapsabet. So there was another man who was brought at night. that he was also a preacher. Then this preacher, okay, there was something that he called that he's making a what sacrifice. He slaughtered a goat, a black chicken, and some doves, 2 doves, and he did not actually slaughter them. He strangled it at night. So there was a certain ceremony that was done at night, and whoever was performing it was that it was a pastor.
And did you not ask? Isn't that bizarre? Had you ever seen such a thing? Did it not spook you?
In my life, in my life, I had never seen it, and now that I was new in the family, I was not given that permission to ask so many questions. Yes.
Okay.
Now I was while I was flashbacking, then I remembered, oh, and that pastor that did this and this, how comes? I was now relating events.
Okay.
You see.
So Prof, talk to us about the kind of things that get cultism, for those who get involved, so appealing. What is it that gets people hooked? You see, even the case of the Magu family, it was reported that it was after he met this lady and they started going to this church in Nigeria that things started going south. He quit his job as a very successful lawyer. He'd been doing very well. You'd imagine everything was okay, and things started going downhill. So what is it that gets people to that place of flipping, switching to the other side?
Yeah, cults tend to be very attractive initially to those who eventually find themselves there. One of the things about them is that they provide a lot of support to their people. This support could be psychological, support could be financial, support could just be friends. You see, they tend to provide a moment within which they cushion one another, they stick to one another, they, you know, kind of provide a social buffer within which all the members tend to find significance. That is something about them which makes them appeal quite significantly. The other one is just the difference which they are. A fellow comes and begins to talk about Christ in a way that you have never understood or you have never heard before, and the way appears to be very exciting and involving. I mean, for people who are looking for something fresh, something different, that would be something that they would want to, you know, very quickly, you know, pay attention to. Today, a number of them will be paying quite a significant attention to issues of money, issues of support, and that kind of stuff.
And where does this sacrificing, you know, of loved ones, you see, he wanted to kill her and the kids, the Magu example killed all of them, and others, where does that, is a sacrifice? What informs that?
When you look at the major cults that have sprouted around the globe, that for some reason is a very significant component of cultism. You look at mass suicides, if you do just a casual reading at cults, even the ones just around here in Africa, in the year 2000, in the case of Uganda, the western part of Uganda, there was this cult which came up and which was talking about their new focus on the 10 Commandments. And you recall that over 1,000 people just disappeared.
Okay, so it has significance in
us.
It shows your commitment perhaps to the cause if you can sacrifice.
Yes.
Our time is running out to about 5 minutes to go. I'll come to you, Onina, because this is you have clients coming into your office. This is a peculiar case with Mapesa talking about this particular incident. I don't know if you have background on this religious, doctrinal, cultism issues, but when you have this kind of a client come in and talk about this kind of issues happening at home, what is it you tell them, and what do you tell people right now watching that are seeing their loved ones perhaps getting into this kind of entrapments?
Well, I must say it's a very daring thing. Just like I told you, when she walked in, she almost ran away, because again, after the experience with the real husband, she also had a nasty experience with another man for a second time. And now this one actually made her, whenever she would see men, she would see like, these people are not safe. So first of all is try to, at that particular point, the self-esteem is very low. So it's a question of raising the self-esteem, trying to help the client learn to trust again. Because at that point, you know, when you marry, there's a lot of happiness and excitement, and you feel like, oh, this is the safest person ever. And then the very person whom, you know, after your parents now, the person who is supposed to be very safe to you turns now to be a killer who wants to kill you. Then, you know, you lose the trust, total trust in the environment. So it is a question of now bringing back that trust.
Okay.
Because the point is, either way, you know, given a second chance, you still have to live. And that is why she's been able to move on to this far.
All right, Phil, and finally to you, those who may be watching, and sometimes it happens just in front of our eyes, it's with loved ones, that one person, you know, then converts, gets into this cultism, as it happened with your husband at the time. What do you tell other people watching to watch out for, to look out for? And when they realize that some things are amiss, what do you, in your opinion, say is important to do?
What I can advise them is that all the time you don't just love somebody and then you trust that this person will lead you and you follow him. You follow him like you are God. You also try to talk to him, look at things, but when they realize things are not working in the right way, try to talk to other friends, talk to some people who can help you, because at first, you see, like me, I was persevering, I was just to myself. They don't talk to a friend, tell somebody who is close to you out there. You don't just keep quiet, because at the end, maybe this person might do anything to you that is not good. That's and right. At the same time, you trust God all the time. Get used to praying.
Yeah. All right.
Show you the way.
Okay, Prof, we've barely scratched the surface as our time is running out here on this topic of cultism. But in a nutshell, as we wind up your closing remarks on really what to do, especially when it's, as I was just putting it to Phil, and it's a loved one that seems to be on this downward trend, slipping into a cult, or it's something that's just not understandable, weird, the bizarre. What do you say to them?
I would very quickly say two things. Number one, let us stick to this simple, old religion. The church is one, apostolic, holy, and universal. Anything that appears to be taking us away from those into certain new forms and experiences, we want to be sensitive to that. Let's be cautious about those, and let us know that God has given us the way. It is fairly simple. There's no complication around it. Number two, I think as a nation, we haven't quite understood the seriousness of cultism. In the United States, we have seen some very fierce forms of cultism. Groups like Branch Davidian and others sacrifice their people in terms of, hundreds. The group that I was talking about in Uganda, almost over 1,000 people. Cultism is not just a doctrinal thing. It is a security question. And any government that seeks to work well with its people should also be quite concerned about some of these things, even how to understand and deal with them.
Yes. And it's good that even in the case for Magu, we saw the court proceedings, at least against that woman who was implicated. We must end it there. Unfortunately, our time is up. But thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen and lady, Phil and Mapesa in the middle, exposed to a culture, sharing your story. We appreciate you for doing that this morning. Boston, who's a counseling psychologist, and Professor James Combo, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs at Daystar University. Thank you very much.